YouTube, what's the deal? It's your girl Jahira, and I am back. I am back to give you the final installment of my Love's Ashes series. And this is, without a doubt, the longest video I have ever made. Because this was the one. This was, there's always that one. This was the one. Not in terms of the quality of our relationship, but certainly in terms of the longevity of our relationship. I'm going to jump right into it in just like a mere moment, but there's something I have to get out of the way first. With my previous Love's Ashes, I hadn't changed the names of anybody. Nick's real name is Nick, and Tony's real name was Tony. God rest his soul. This particular individual that I am speaking of in this episode is alive, and I hope and pray well, but the content of this video is not my place to divulge his actual name or any identifying characteristics about him. So, for the purpose of this video, I have named him David. And certain places, as I said before, characteristics, certain slight instances have been changed for the purpose of respecting his anonymity. I don't know if he even knows that I'm making videos. I don't know. We are not in contact at all now, and I'm not, well, you'll see. Needless to say, should he ever stumble upon my videos, he doesn't need to find himself as the subject with all of his details revealed in one of them. So with that being said, I know that not all of you will watch this because of the length, and I'm okay with that. I'm doing this because I've made a commitment to be as honest with y'all as I possibly can. And this really speaks to the heart of why I am at the point in my life that I am. So, without further ado, I present to you Love's Ashes, number 3, David. I met David in 1999 at a Boston market. I was there with a couple of my friends. He was there with a couple of his friends, and apparently our friends knew each other. And it wasn't anything like, there was no love at first sight or anything like that. He was just like kind of amongst a group of people, and we were all kind of sitting down and talking and, just shooting the shit, really. I didn't really think much of it. But after that, we started hanging out more, in a group setting, though. There was this arcade, and we would all go. He was in a relationship, actually, at the time, and I was dating somebody. But, we would, see each other in passing and, just exchange pleasantries, smile, stuff like that. And we ended up exchanging numbers purely on, the strength of, whatever. We have good conversations. So, it seemed like the next logical step. There was no, overt, sexual tension, anything along those lines. But we started talking on the phone and just kind of exchanging notes on each other, what do you like to do? What's your favorite color? What makes you happy? Stuff like that. And those conversations, before I knew it, we would be on the phone for 3.5 hours, and half of the night would be over. We would just talk like all the time. I mean, pretty much every night. But I still never, you know what I mean, had those. There was no hidden crush. There was none of that. So he was living with somebody, and it was clear that, you know, he was kind of living with them on the strength of their relationship, and that was ending. Basically, he called me one day. This is probably about 2 months. No, that's a lie. Maybe a month and a half after we met. He called me and he asked me if he could come over, which wasn't a problem, and I said, sure, come on. And so he came over and explained to me that, you know, his relationship basically had ended, and he, you know, didn't want to go to his mother's house. I was 19 at the time, which would make him 21. Yeah, so basically he asked me if he could crash with me. And I said yes. You know, that me being who I was at the time, which was just a very accommodating person, I said yes. So he got, you know, his stuff, which really wasn't much, and ended up coming to my house. At first, you know, I mean, everything was kind of as it was. There was a friendship there, and so we, you know, continued along in that capacity. Maybe a month after that, he made a pass at me. And I, you know, acquiesced, despite how surprised I was. And we ended up sleeping together that night. And so when that was over, it was kind of like a, you know, okay, so what does this mean? Where do we stand? And he was like, well, where do you stand? And I mean, the short version of a long story is that due to where my self-esteem was at that point, you have to bear in mind, this is 2 years after Tony had passed away. And I was still very much in mourning. And really didn't see myself with anybody else. So I basically said to him something along the lines of, you know, why don't we just try to establish kind of an open relationship where what you do is what you do and what I do is what I do. And you know, we'll just, you know, kind of casually be together. He said that was fine. I'm quite certain in retrospect that's how he would have wanted it anyway. But we operated in that space for maybe another 6 months. And then by that time I had developed very real feelings for him. And I kind of, you know, I wanted to be exclusive. And so I asked him, you know, whether or not that was possible. I should state that, you know, during those 6 months, I really wasn't, I mean, I would have occasional dalliances with other guys, but, you know, he was kind of actively dating other people. And there was a lot of drama involved in that, because he made no effort to hide it at all. But when I approached him about becoming exclusive, he agreed to it. And so for a long time, we were exclusive. Or so I thought. As it turns out, for a long time, I was exclusive. And he, I mean, I'm not sure that he was actually faithful to me for longer than a stretch of, I don't know, maybe 2.5 months. I'll say that. As the years started to come, as the years began to roll in, he would disappear. I mean, tell me that he was going to his cousin's house and be gone for days on end. I mean, this was kind of in the days sort of like between pagers and cell phones, so there was no real way to reach him when he was out and about, and I would just be at home. He had his own set of keys by then, so he could come and go as he pleased. And I would stay up at night waiting for him. He would never come. And, then he would come in, 3-4 days after the fact, like nothing had happened. And just, go straight to the fridge or whatever. But because I didn't really have the context of what an adult relationship should look like, I kind of thought that, it was bad and it was hurtful, but it was nothing that we couldn't work on. 4 years into our relationship, which had taken us through 3 different apartments, and we finally had gotten settled in one. Everything was still going on. I mean, he would go and come back. He really wasn't capable of holding down a job, but because at that point I was allowing people to, escort inside of my apartment. We had a fairly steady income. He couldn't keep a job for longer than 2 or 3 months. Something would happen and he would get fired, or he was falsely accused and he would get fired, and it just, I handled every single bill. I mean, every bill you can possibly think of. The only bill that I didn't take care of was when he finally did get a cell phone. He paid it. Actually, one of the more emotionally abusive instances in our relationship was when he had gotten himself a cell phone and then he had gotten me a cell phone, but like it was kind of 2 people on the same plan. Mind you, I was paying for my half of the bill, but because he felt like it was his cell phone, when he would get mad at me, he would go into my phone and erase all the numbers out of it. And I mean, it was, I was so young, and in retrospect it sounds so trivial, but at the time it was really traumatic. He had given me a teddy bear one Valentine's Day. This is just going to come in like a rush. I mean, I didn't rehearse this worth a damn, and I probably should have. He had given me a teddy bear one Valentine's Day, and then once after an argument, he cut it up in front of me. And I sat there on the bed and I cried. There was a lot of crying. And a lot more crying that I didn't allow to show outwardly. But again, I would have, because we were into, as I said, about 4 years now, and I was so attached to what I believed was love, and was what I believed love should look like. This is hard. I took on this mentality that I would rather have him at his worst than not have him at all. Because he wasn't always nice to me, and he didn't always treat me right, but he was there. And so I didn't know what I would do without him there. We would argue, and, he'd stomp off and be gone for a couple of days, and then we would have this, big reunion of being able to sit down together and have these heartfelt conversations, and I'm expressing my feelings, and he's defending himself. I'm sorry, y'all. This is why it took me so long to do this. One particular instance I will never forget. I was expressing to him what I felt was wrong in our relationship. And he said to me, and I'm damn near giving y'all verbatim what he said to me. It's very clear that this is how you feel about what's wrong, and so you need to be the one to work it out. As though what I said had no bearing on us, it was simply just me. Getting back to the original story, 4 years into our relationship, on January 22nd, we were just in our little apartment, and I mean so, like, little. Like, this room was about the size of that apartment, which may have somewhat contributed to the issue at hand. But it just seemed like any normal day. He had made some side reference to me about, he asked me what I was going to cook, and I was like, we're just going to heat something up. Because I almost never cooked in that relationship. I know that I'm going off on these tangents, y'all. I'm sorry. It's just, I haven't thought about this in years. I mean, I really haven't thought about this in years, and I probably should have taken some time to organize my thoughts, but I wanted it to be authentic, and I didn't want to feel rehearsed in any of this. But yeah, I almost never cooked in that relationship because he couldn't stand doing dishes. So I ate frozen food. I mean, for upwards of 5. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, he asked me about dinner, and I just said, we're going to heat something up. And he said, well, when we're married, you're not going to be doing all of this heating up. And I said, well, in order for us to be married, you're going to have to ask me. He said, oh, so I got to ask you? Yeah, that's kind of how it works. And in his boxer shorts, in that apartment, he got down on one knee. And he said, Jahira, I love you, and you would be making me the happiest man, the happiest man on earth if you would agree to be my wife. And I cried. He had no ring, but that didn't matter. I said yes. And then he got up, and I hugged him, and I kissed him, and then he went to the store to get cigarettes. I don't want to give y'all the impression that it was all bad. We laughed a lot. A whole lot. But, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. Shortly after he did that, I began to plan our wedding. I bought every bridal magazine that you could possibly imagine. I found my dream dress, and I put the deposit on it. And I had gotten it in my head that, at the time I didn't have my breast augmentation. And as long as I had been in transition, and the fact that I hadn't done that yet, when I knew that it was something I really wanted to do for myself, it caused me a great deal of strain. It's very hard to explain to anybody who hasn't been there, the gnawing desire to customize your body, so to speak, in order to achieve that which you know to be true about yourself. And I mean, I had, prior to, I hope all of y'all know that these are implants. I was about a 38B at the time, but I mean, I was always a big girl, and I knew that in terms of proportion, I needed a bigger size. And I mean, I used to complain about it to him, and I cried, and, it was really hurtful at the time. You would just sort of have to know in order to know. And so, we had kind of slowed down on the people escorting in my house kind of thing. And he's like, well, if I started escorting, I bet I could get them for you. If he just started, like, being a, what do they call it? Gigolo? Yeah. So, I was like, there's no way. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars here. And he's like, no, I could do it. I could definitely do it. I promise you I could do it. Let me prove it to you. And so, as I said a lot in that relationship, okay. I'm just going to be chain smoking, and y'all are going to have to deal with it. So he started. He started escorting. And during the time that he had set it in his mind that he was going to buy me these breast implants, we lived on the dollar menu, and you could buy these microwave frozen pizzas at Shaw's in Boston for 99 cents. And I mean, he would go and buy $20 worth of microwave pizzas. And I give you my absolute word, that and McDonald's is what we lived on for 4.5 months. But he got the money together. And he handed it to me. And he and my mother came with me when I had my surgery. And I was blown away by what he had done. I mean, I was blown away. To me, there was no greater act of generosity, of love, of this, of that, of the other. So, he took care of me when I was in recovery. He is the one, and I should mention this because I would be really remiss in my duties if I did not mention this, who, when I was in the throes of my addiction and had made the decision to get clean, stayed with me and comforted me and just was there the whole time as I was going through withdrawal. So, I mean, again, I definitely do not want to leave y'all with the impression that that everything was just all bad. It was not. Shortly, and I mean very shortly after I had fully recovered from my surgery, he ended up developing a lump, which, without putting too much business out of there, turned out to be a cyst, which required emergency surgery because of the location of it. I mean, it was just as simple as we had gone into the immediate care of the hospital to have it looked at because he just wasn't sure what it, and we weren't sure what it was, and they ended up keeping him, and he was in surgery that very night. And because of the location of the cyst, when he came out of surgery, they weren't able to sew him up. They just wanted him to heal naturally. So it required packing the wound and everything like that. And I became Florence Nightingale packing this damn wound. But because, he had been, whatever, ill, injured, whatever the case may be, because of the surgery, he couldn't escort. I mean, there was just no way that he could work. So we brought in somebody. To do the work, and basically we would take a cut and the whole 9 yards, pretty much what I was doing before. By this time I had been clean for a while, and the person that we brought in was not. He was a longtime friend of mine. I mean, he was my friend long before he was David's. But it turned out that, he had a problem with crack. Now, crack was something, I mean, I had tried it. I tried it once, definitely once. I'd been around it a lot because, oh God, when you're a sex worker, sometimes they just want to smoke while you sit in the car and it's a whole thing. But I had only ever smoked it once, and it was just not for me. It was not my thing. But I vividly remember this friend sitting in me and David's apartment, smoking crack. And I mean, I was just really blown away by it. When David and I discussed it after our friend had left later on that night, it turned out that, when he was, 15 and 16, he had been in group homes and stuff like that. Like, he had, some baggage with him. But apparently he had experimented with crack. And so, we sort of had a conversation about that. And, I really didn't think much of it. And then David's healing was coming along really well. So, I mean, I just figured that we would be able to get back to work pretty soon and continue planning our wedding and everything along those lines. Very shortly thereafter, things started to change drastically. guys that would come into the apartment and pay, $150 for the services, I would come in the apartment, after the clients would leave, and David would tell me, oh, he only gave me 60. Oh, he only gave me 80. He only gave me 50. And I'm like, since when are we, doing this? Basically, you're cheating on me for $50. Like, what part of the game is that? And I didn't really think much of it, but I mean, then it came to a point of where I would be calling my mother to, basically send me some money, this is that and the other. It was just a whole thing. And I have to then, kind of carry us. And in the midst of it all, I am still paying all of the bills. All the rent, all the lights, all the heat. You know what I mean? All that. And then I had come home from hanging out with my friends one day, and I noticed that the DVD player was gone. And I asked David what happened, and he said, oh my God, we must have gotten broken into. Oh my God. And so I went through hell, changing the locks, paying, through the nose to have these locks changed, because it was one of those, lock, deadbolt, chain situation. Like, it was a whole thing. And then maybe a week, 10 days later, I came home again, and my little PSP PlayStation thing was gone. He said, we must have gotten broken into. And I'm going, how is this possible? What am I doing wrong? And dear God, I mean, at this point, you know what I mean? The money is not coming in like it once was. I am robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know what I'm saying? Begging my mother 2, 3, 4 times a week for money just to keep food in the house. This is not like luxury items. So I didn't know. I didn't know what to think. And I would talk to my trusted friends, and they would say, girl, something sounds fishy. Something sounds wrong. And I just couldn't see it. I mean, I guess it's possible that you could, be broken into twice in 10 days. Or maybe 2 weeks after that, same situation. Nah, I'm a liar. I woke up. I had gone to bed the night before. I woke up and the TV was gone. And I asked him, and he said, I really don't know. I really don't know. We're going to have to do something. I mean, this is just really bad. This neighborhood isn't good. Mind you, we've been there for 3.5 years. It was a college town that we lived in. So the worst aspect of what you were going to deal with is drunk-ass white people, like, singing down the street. I mean, it really wasn't much of nothing. And I lived on a major street. It wasn't like I was off in the cut somewhere. This was a very busy, very well-known street in Boston. Oh, Lord. So I'm at my wit's end. And I'm still thinking that we're being robbed. And I don't know what to do. I'm renting the place, so I can't install an alarm system. I am at a loss for what to do. 3 days, literally 3 days after that happened, I came home again, and the blender was gone. A brand new blender that my mother had bought me for Christmas. And y'all, I don't know, but it was just something about that blender being gone. It took me to get to the blender to say, you know what? I just have a hunch that this motherfucker, excuse my language, has gone back to crack. And he had. I confronted him about it. He denied it. I knew. I knew that I knew that I knew. throughout the, maybe 2 months that it took for all of this to transpire, I would notice that money was missing, that I would go to bed with a certain amount and wake up with $20 less, $30 less. And what broke the camel's back was that he was in the bathroom taking a shower one night, and I had gotten some money from my mother just that day. And, I mean, when I tell y'all the fridge had an echo, I mean, there was next to no food, so I had just, I planned to walk up the street to the supermarket the very next day, and I was going to put some food in the house, and you know what I mean, and we would be okay. And I put the money in a book, and put the book back in my bookcase. And I went to bed. And it was probably about $120. And I woke up the next day, and there was $10 in that book. And at that point, I said, you have to go. You have to go. You just have to go. And he just, I can't believe you're doing this to us. How could you? This, that, and the guilt. My heart was breaking right in front of him. But I put him out. And from there, he and I would talk. I don't even know where he went, but we would talk on the phone, and, how can you do this? And I was there for you. I bought you your breasts, da-da-da-da-da. I helped you get clean. I was there for you. And I dealt with the guilt of that for about 2 years after we had broken up. When the hell did we break up, Jahira? Had to have been 2005. We was together like 6.5 years. I dealt with the guilt of that for about 2 years after the fact, until I just did a little math, which is to say, my breasts, here's me just putting all my business out there, my breast augmentation cost me in total $4,270, which he paid for fully. The rent in my apartment was $850 a month. $850 a month, and I paid it for the full 3 years that we were there. So to do the calculations, basically, he paid for about 5 months worth of rent out of 3 years by paying for my breast augmentation. So, and then with regard to him, being there as I got clean, and me not being there for him, it's very simple. I knew I had to get clean. I wanted to get clean. I didn't want to live that life anymore. I couldn't live that life anymore. I saw how close to death I had come. He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. And you can't get somebody ready if that's not where they want to be. Sorry about that, y'all. You're going to have to forgive me. I had to cut my camera off so that I could have a nervous breakdown. Oh, thank God for Derek, a.k.a. D-Rocka, who called at the perfect time and didn't judge me when I was sobbing. It's difficult. The past half hour has not been easy, having to relive this. It brought up a lot of memories. Not all of them bad. When my close friends who know about this situation and were present for it, and those people whom I have told sort of along the route of my life, have asked me whether or not I believe that David ever loved me. And I believe that he grew to love me. And I believe that he loved me as best that he could. I believe that. With all my heart, I believe that. I do not believe that he loved me in the way that I deserve to be loved. I don't believe that he loved me. I believe that he was fond of me, and from that fondness grew love. But a relationship that should have lasted maybe 3.5 months, I managed to stretch out over 6.5 years. And that was because of me. Because I felt that something was better than nothing. I felt that I could, and I was more than willing to put up with his indiscretions, his abuse, both verbal, emotional, sometimes physical, for the sake of having somebody I could call my own. When in actuality, I couldn't even call him my own because he was, in the words of the Braxtons, laying it low and spreading it wide. But I do believe that he loved me as best he could. You know, my anger was twofold. The anger primarily was for myself, or at myself. That I had allowed it to go on as long as it did, that I didn't think highly enough of me to be able to put a stop to, behavior that in no way could ever be considered conducive to a healthy relationship, that I was so desperate to feel validated in my womanhood by having a man that I was willing to overlook, glaring signals that this was not the man for me. And I was angry at him. I was angry at him for giving up on himself and giving up on us. I was angry at him for not being the man that I knew he was capable of being. I was angry at him for taking my 20s, or the bulk of my 20s, and running away with it. I was angry at him for so many reasons. And I have come to a place where I have been able to, by God's grace, forgive myself for that which I was angry about. I have not fully reached the place where I can forgive him. But y'all, I'm trying not to cry. Every day, every single day, I pray that God removes it from my heart and instills in me not just a sense of peace. Peace is a beautiful thing, and God knows I'm seeking that, but the strength to open myself up to the possibility of receiving love again. And that is why they are dating dilemmas and not relationship dilemmas, because it was almost 7 years of my life. And I'm afraid. I'm desperately afraid of making the wrong decision again. And I almost feel like I now purposely fall into situations with other people that I know won't work out, simply because at least I'll walk into it knowing it won't work out. Thereby, I will not be blindsided like I was last time. So that is David. And that is the last of my love's ashes. In the midst of it all, y'all, I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful, because what I learned from that experience is something that no college could ever teach you. No grad school, no nothing. It was the greatest life lesson I learned. And it forced me to a place of really finding out who I was and what I was capable of and just how strong I can be. that I can still even sit here and relive this horrible story for the purpose of, I pray, benefiting one of you. So, that was David. And I am putting David to rest. Thank you for watching.